who, with victory yesterday, must be brimming with confidence today going into race number 2, though the conditions today very, very different to yesterday. Thomas Preining then was effectively the winner in the Carrera Cup race. Took P2. And he goes from P2 on the grid. And there you can see what a magnificent lineup of cars for this Porsche Motorsport race weekend. Larry ten Voorde from Team Deutsche Post by Project One, as I mentioned when we were looking at the highlights clip, was by far and away looked like second was assured for him in the race, but in the end it wasn't to be. A mistake going into turn number 1 meant that he ended up losing out to the Porsche junior driver from Conrad Motorsport, Thomas Preining. So Herring, Preining, ten Voorde, and then it's Browner going from P4 on the grid. He looked very, very good yesterday, Edward Lewis Browner, in the 991, again from Class 7F, the same class as Jürgen Herring. Then it's Henrik Skog and Arkin Acker, goes from P6 on the grid. Arkin Acker of the Attempto Racing team boss, to be fair, and yesterday was the first time that I had the privilege to talk about Arkin Acker as a racing driver. During the race yesterday, he was shown to have received a drive-through penalty, but insofar as we can understand, the drive-through penalty was rescinded in the end. So he finished a good P6. Right, Herring P1, Preining P2, Larry ten Voorde P3, then it's Edward Lewis Brauner, then it's Henrik Skog and Arkin Acker before we find Heyrowski, Triller, Osiaka, Jorn Schmidt Stade. Then it's going to be Käfer, Rakoff, Kosch, Skipansky, Hornung, Verman, Esman, Donchev, Spring, Nuss, Wolf Natan, Kleinbach, Harmsen, Holger Harmsen, P23, Verft and Kemper, and the rest of the order then. As they make their way now, the clock has started. The start is behind the safety car. We expect the safety car to stay out for at least a couple of laps, just to allow the drivers to acclimatise themselves to these very, very wet racing conditions. We have had one race out on track already this morning here at the Nürburgring for a single-seater category, and cars were scattering everywhere, it has to be said, so conditions are particularly treacherous. So it's exactly 30 minutes race, and we can see problems there for the car not getting away of, I think it's Georgi Donchev, who was struggling to get away there. Sure enough, the marshals come to the assistance of Georgi then and try and get that car going. A moment without a great deal of success. Big lump of car to be push starting. So Herring, Preining, ten Voorde, Brauner, Skog, Acker, then it's Wolfgang Triller and Osiaka. Right at the back of the grid is Carlos Rivas, who was involved in that incident yesterday with Wolf Natan. And it looks like it Chev car, the Bulgarian driver. It's P3 in the Porsche Sports Cup Endurance in 2016. Podium position today looks extremely unlikely now, racing in the 5E category. So as I mentioned, this Porsche Motorsport race weekend, of which the Porsche Carrera Cup Germany is a guest. It's a race series that's some 13 years old, and 6 meetings in 2017, always 2 races per weekend, and there's normally some 45 cars in the Super Sports Cup. Larry ten Voorde, who running in P3, his first Porsche season in the Sports Cup in 2016, and came in GT4 champion. Stefan Rakoff, we look at on the screen now. Down there in P11, lights still on the safety car, and there you can see just how the visibility already is problematic. And when the cars get up to racing speed, the spray that comes off the cars really hamper those, everyone other than Jürgen Hering. So the somewhat redundant number 168 car then of Georgi Donchev, as the cars make their way through the NGK chicane for the first time of asking. Cars being led around by the safety car. And the race has officially started. The clock is counting down. As I said, it's a 30-minute race duration, which is standard fare for the Porsche Sports Cup, and the Carrera Cup very much a guest on the category, and delighted to be here. Number of drivers, of course, from the Carrera Cup Deutschland run the campaigns in the Super Cup as well, and therefore will be in attendance at Silverstone in the UK this weekend, and therefore not able to take part in this Porsche Motorsport race weekend. So the packed paddock here, big FIA WEC event at the Nürburgring. Weather conditions yesterday somewhat overcast and cloudy, but and turned very cold in the evening, but it was forecast for the potential of showers today, but I think the actual rain we're receiving is far greater than any of us expected. So Jürgen Hering then, birthday boy yesterday, P1, Thomas Preining P2, Larry Ten Voorde, the Project One racing driver, is P3. Cars snake their way through this 5.15 kilometer Grand Prix configuration of the Nürburgring circuit. When here racing as the Carrera Cup Deutschland, generally it's always on the sprint configuration of the circuit. The safety cars coming in this lap, just being we will get the race underway. And there, heli shot then with raindrops on the camera lens, as you can see. So there, confirmation that the safety car is coming in this lap, and the race will be underway good and proper. We'll get some 23 minutes of race action from the combination of the Porsche Supersports Cup and the Porsche Carrera Cup here at the Nürburgring for race 2. You're very welcome to join us. Thank you so much for being there, and I hope you're going to enjoy the race. Just have a feeling that it could be really rather dramatic in these challenging weather conditions. Jürgen Hering then going from P1, Thomas Preining P2, Larry Ten Voorde is P3, Brauner is P4, Henrik Skog, Arkin Acker, then Wolfgang Triller. So, enjoyed a drink with Wolfgang Triller and Wolf Natan last night. Both of them jolly good fun. So lights have gone out on the safety car. Confirmation that it comes in at the end of this lap, and we go to racing proper. The Jürgen Hering car then with the Preco Herbert Motorsport livery, then the familiar Conrad Motorsport colours of Thomas Preining, then the Project One car of Larry Ten Voorde. So race director has decided that the laps behind the safety car are enough to have allowed the drivers to acclimatise themselves to these challenging conditions, and is prepared to release the cars. Through the NGK chicane they come, then the safety car will peel off, and it is away and racing with visibility very challenging indeed for each and every one of the drivers. So Jürgen Hering now about to cross the timing line. Thomas Preining P2, Larry Ten Voorde is P3. Those three have broken away a bit from Brauner and Skog and Arkin Acker and Wolfgang Triller. So into turn number 1, Jürgen Hering then tiptoeing his way through turn number 1. Thomas Preining, nothing like close enough to be able to have a go at Jürgen. Larry Ten Voorde closer to Thomas Preining. It's a huge grid of the combination of Porsche Sports Cup and Porsche Carrera Cup cars. And already one is around. And that is Holger Harmsen, the Lease AG car. Holger Harmsen has gone around. Finished in the 20s yesterday and is going to get the car back out on track once again. But having a pirouette in these very, very difficult race conditions. And also having gone around is our race leader. And there, you can see, has returned on track, but he's much, much further down the order down there in P16. So it's Thomas Preining that leads the race now from Larry Ten Voorde. We didn't see the spin for Jürgen Hering, but Jürgen Hering now going to have to make his way through from P19 on the grid, or P19 in the race now. So our race leader is the Porsche Junior, Thomas Preining for Conrad Motorsport. P2, of course, Larry Ten Voorde. And then coming under some pressure from Henrik Skoog now is the 991 car of Edward Lewis Brawner. You can see really on the back of the Brawner car now. Here comes Wolfgang Triller then on the number 99 car of Arkin Acker. So Edward Lewis Brawner for the moment is okay. Arkin Acker first into the chicane ahead of Wolfgang Triller for the moment. And behind Wolfgang Triller is Asiaka. Acker with a wider line around the final turn. So as we stay with this, Wolfgang Triller inevitably going to have a go going into turn number 1. Brawner is under pressure from Skoog as well. And here down the inside comes Wolfgang Triller now, providing he can scrub the speed off and make the turn in, but no, he doesn't. Now, this could provide Arkin Acker with the opportunity to come back, but if Wolfgang Triller can remain on the inside, which he's done, well, that gives him the inside there, but it gives him the outside for the next turn. So if Arkin Acker remains absolutely committed to this, then the place may not change. So the two of them fighting absolutely side by side, and behind them Osiaka is just waiting to pick up any pieces. Should the two in front, should the battle go awry. So Wolfgang Triller on the left-hand side, Arkin Acker on the right-hand side, and Wolfgang Triller at last has got his nose in front to take up that P5 position, and now Arkin Acker is under some pressure from the 991 car, driven by Osiaka, the Porsche 991. Lights flashing furiously at Arkin Acker ahead. So Wolfgang Triller then, another one of the Carrera Cup racers, moves himself up into P5. Thomas Preining right at the front of the pack has got some 1.1 seconds advantage over Larry Ten Voorde, who is running in P2. Then Edward Lewis Brawner, and then Henrik Skoog, and Wolfgang Triller now having got past Arkin Acker to take up P5. Acker is P6, Osiaka is P7. Osiaka at the moment then with the back end of the car looking very loose then as he's chasing down the Arkin Acker car, and thus far has not been able to get close. So there's Kiefer then, who's running ahead of Hornung, and Koch ahead of them is Skapansky, who is running in P10. He's running in Class 5E. And whichever way you look, there is plenty of action going on. Veerman and S-Man. So the battle for P15. But there is the leading car, Thomas Preining, in the familiar duck blue colours of Conrad Motorsport. Now taking a very wide line here is Henrik Skoog. Now, Henrik Skoog will try and get underneath the Edward Lewis Brawner car if he can. Great heli shot of P1 and P2 here. That is Thomas Preining leading the race. And P2 is Larry Ten Voorde. And this is the battle that's going on for P3. between Henrik Skoog and Edward Lewis Brawner. Henrik Skoog then, regular racer in the Porsche Carrera Cup Deutschland. Whoa! Well, Wolf Natan and the car of Christian Koch have had a coming together, and we just saw, just before we went into that, and there it is in replay. So both Natan and Christian Koch out. Well, as I was saying, just before we went to that picture, we could see the fight getting very, very close between Henrik Skoog and Edward Lewis Brawner, and Henrik Skoog has got ahead now. So we have 3 Porsche Carrera Cup racers in the top 3 positions at the moment, because it is Thomas Preining, Larry ten Voorde, and then Henrik Skoog, who has managed to get past the Edward Lewis Brawner car. Then it's Wolfgang Triller, who is running in P5, but he's some 2.5 seconds down on Brawner at the moment, but we'll be trying to close that gap. Ooh, and getting very sideways there for Edward Lewis Brawner. I said just a few moments ago, the back end of the car did look rather loose, and the Edward Lewis Brawner car then running in the 7F category. So in the number 87 car, Soren Spreng then for the Black Falcon team. And of course, Jürgen Hering desperately trying to make haste up the order following the loss of his P1 position earlier on. Through the NGK chicane they come then. Jürgen Hering now running in P16. Wehrmann is ahead, and so is Spreng. 14, 15, 16, as you can see on screen as they round the final turn and head down the start-finish straight here at the Nürburgring, where it is very, very wet indeed. We're about at half distance of this race. First few laps were under the guidance of the safety car. Stefan Raykopf there. Battling for P9 is Jean Schmidt-Stade and Szczepanski. Whoa, and that was a very missed braking there. Absolutely straight on into the runoff area. So Szczepanski is P9, Jorn Schmidt-Stade is P10. So Jorn Schmidt-Stade, another one of the Porsche Carrera Cup Deutschland racers. And it was Wolf Natan, we suspect, that went straight on then for the Race Union Huber Racing. Christoph Huber's team. Regular competitors in the Porsche Carrera Cup. This battle for P9 then continues. Szczepanski it is that is P9. Jean Schmidt-Stade trying to reel in that car, and there you can see over the last few laps how the gap has seesawed. So big defending from the number 29 car of Szczepanski, who races in the 5E class for 991s. Jorn Schmidt-Stade, of course, in the 912 car. Into the NGK chicane. Thomas Preining and Larry ten Voorde. This is P1 and P2. The gap has come down to, well, it's actually 8 tenths now as they cross the timing line. So Larry ten Voorde quietly is reeling in the car of Thomas Preining. Now, ten Voorde made a mistake yesterday. He was running in P2 in the race and locked up twice going into turn number 1. And very much wants to make amends for the mistake that he made yesterday. And I don't know whether Thomas Preining might have a small problem here, because Larry ten Voorde really is right on the back of the Conrad Motorsport car of Thomas Preining, who's leading the race at the moment. It is P1 and P2 from our heli shot. We can watch this unfold then. 12.5 minutes of the race still to go. Here is the live gap then between the two of them, just a tenth. Look. Preining, for whatever reason, is struggling now. And Larry ten Voorde, the Netherlands-based racer, in the Project One colours, who is P2, is all over the back of the Thomas Preining car. And there you can see ten Voorde trying to decide which way to go, and trying to harry Thomas Preining and force him into making an error. Thomas Preining, a Porsche Junior racer. Larry ten Voorde really is right on him, flashing his lights now, trying to distract Thomas Preining. For the moment, Thomas Preining is having none of it. He's sticking his elbows out and defending for all he's worth, but there's no question about it. The Larry ten Voorde car looks to have a significant pace advantage over the Thomas Preining car as they go through turn number one. Stand by, if not before, for a challenge going into turn one. They're through the last turn now, and Larry ten Voorde will be setting up an overtake now to go into turn number one. So he's right behind Thomas Preining. Preining trying to protect the inside line. They are virtually welded together. Larry ten Voorde dives to the outside now. Thomas Preining tries to make the car as wide as possible. Now Larry ten Voorde will try and brake now and then come underneath the Thomas Preining car. It was good defensive driving from Thomas Preining. He knew exactly what Larry ten Voorde was going to do, and therefore he made it very, very difficult for him. That was a good bit of defensive driving from Thomas Preining, which denied Larry ten Voorde. Larry getting very frustrated now, stuck behind this Conrad Motorsport car, gets right alongside, but he's on the outside line. So both of them absolutely together here, side by side into the next turn. But again, Thomas Preining has got the inside line, but superior traction from Larry ten Voorde all the way around the outside. If he can scrub the speed off now, he's done it. And that was a brilliant overtake from Larry ten Voorde. Supreme effort there. Here comes Thomas Preining fighting back, though. This could rage and rage, this battle. Whoa, and there's the mistake from Larry ten Voorde. Plays right into Thomas Preining's hands. And therefore, Thomas Preining once again takes up the lead of this race. What a fantastic battle between these two Carrera Cup racers. The Porsche Junior, Thomas Preining, and Larry ten Voorde right behind him for Project One Motorsport. Definitely, in my opinion, ten Voorde seems to have more pace in his car than Thomas Preining. And ten Voorde really did a good job in terms of getting past Thomas Preining, going all the way around the outside, only then to make a mistake some 2 turns later, which allowed Preining back into the lead again. Now you can see that that was the mistake that came from ten Voorde, just carrying too much speed, and that played right into the hands of Thomas Preining, who was able to then retake that P1 position. So we await them around the final turn then. Here they come, heading once again into turn number one. Now, that was where Thomas Preining did a brilliant job in defending last time around. Ten Voorde to the outside once again, and what he wants to do is try and brake now and then dive underneath the Thomas Preining car. And this time, room is allowed for him to be able to do that. But Preining, I think, is going to have his nose in front going into the next turn. No, maybe not. Larry ten Voorde all the way around the outside again. Brilliant driving from Larry ten Voorde, it has to be said, to take that car on the less grippier part of the track around the outside, which gives him the inside for this turn. And so Larry ten Voorde now once again does take up the lead from Thomas Preining. If these two keep fighting for the remaining 8 minutes like this, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. But now Larry ten Voorde needs not to make an error, which is what he did last time, having done the overtake and having made brilliant effort all the way around the outside. But now it looks like, and this is where the pace advantage perhaps, this is where ten Voorde got it wrong last time around, but this time Thomas Preining running a bit wide as well, the car sliding in that turn. So for the moment then, it is Larry ten Voorde leading from Thomas Preining, then is Henrik Skoog. Edward Lewis Brawner is P4. Wolfgang Triller P5 ahead of Arkin Acker, who is P6. The order on the ticker as we're looking at the battle for P22, as once again there was a mistake, obviously, from Larry ten Voorde, and that has allowed Thomas Preining through again. This P1 and P2 position keeps changing. God, I would have loved to have seen. Oh, well, here we go. This is the mistake then from Larry ten Voorde. Ran wide, out onto the grass, onto the runoff area. And that was enough for Thomas Preining to once again take up the lead. So pit in on the left-hand side, as you can see, as they make their way around the final turn. Thomas Preining sticking his elbows out, making it very, very wide. Larry ten Voorde now with the inside line on Thomas Preining. It should be a relatively easy overtake going into turn number 1, you would think. But it's where Larry ten Voorde made a huge error yesterday and locked up. So Thomas Preining to the outside, but Thomas Preining carries much too much speed, and this could be bad news for Thomas Preining. If he keeps the momentum going, he'll drag himself out of the gravel, but Henrik Skoog is lurking not far behind. Well, there was just a little bit of a touch there from Larry ten Voorde on Thomas Preining, and there was the mistake from Preining, who he had to keep his foot in through that gravel. Wolfgang Triller and Arkin Acker are fighting over P5 at the moment. Wolfgang Triller managed to get past Arkin Acker earlier on in the race, and by Jiminy, we've only got just under 6 minutes of the race left. So this battle for P5 then, Wolfgang Triller then, who currently has P5, Arkin Acker for the Attempto Racing team is P6, and has really reeled in Wolfgang Triller here. Wherever you look, the fight's going on, and just wonder whether Thomas Preining in P2 is going to be vulnerable now to an attack from Henrik Skoog, who's less than a second behind him following that runoff from Thomas Preining. So Wolfgang Triller, P5. Arkin Acker is quicker at the moment, but it's all very well being quicker. You've got to try and find a way past. And Wolfgang Triller at the moment has got the measure of Arkin Acker. Arkin, of course, supremely experienced. And there is Thomas Preining, which has just played into the hands of Larry ten Voorde, who's up the road and has got a lead of... Oh, as Wolfgang Triller gets very sideways there, Larry ten Voorde with a lead of some 5.7 seconds over Thomas Preining. As I say, might be vulnerable to an attack from Henrik Skoog, but this is the battle that we're watching at the moment, which is for P5, which is being played out by the Carrera Cup driver Wolfgang Triller and the Porsche Sports Cup driver Arkin Acker. So heavy braking then into the chicane. And to the final turn, the Coca-Cola turn, where Arkin Acker will potentially start to set up an overtake for turn 1. Though his exit from the final turn, he's not as close to Wolfgang Triller as perhaps he would like to be. They cross our commentary position here now and head down into turn 1. I think Wolfgang Triller has got this for the moment, because Arkin Acker is going to carry too much speed there, isn't he? If he can't scrub that speed off. Well, to be fair to him, it was good driving from Arkin Acker. He knew exactly where he could leave the braking until, and now he's on the outside of Wolfgang Triller as they go side by side, but it's the less grippy part of what is an already grip challenged surface here. But Arkin Acker staying absolutely committed and goes through on Wolfgang Triller. So Arkin Acker moves himself up to P5, but Wolfgang Triller is going to fight back now. Side by side they go. Wolfgang Triller has got the measure of Acker on this occasion. But these two have been fighting tooth and nail over the last couple of laps, and it's been really, really enjoyable to watch. So the Sports Cup driver Arkin Acker, who is currently P6, Wolfgang Triller, the Carrera Cup racer, who is currently P5, with 3 minutes on the clock remaining. Here comes Arkin Acker once again to try and get underneath now, but Wolfgang Triller is aware of it and makes the car wide and denies Arkin Acker the opportunity to do so. Here is our race leader, Larry ten Voorde, who is up the road from Thomas Preining, who, to be fair, has opened up a reasonable gap over Henrik Skoog now. So His P2, barring any errors, looks relatively assured. Henrik Skoog leads Edward Lewis Brawner then, who is P4. And here comes that battle that's going on for P5 between Wolfgang Triller and Arkin Acker. Arkin Acker going through now on the inside. Wolfgang Triller will try and come back as they head down behind the paddock area here at the Nürburgring. They are so close together. It's brilliant racing from the pair of them. They take that turn absolutely flat. Heavy braking then as they head in towards the NGK chicane, and for the moment Arkin Acker has got the measure of Wolfgang Triller, so it's Arkin Acker P5 relegating Wolfgang Triller to P6. We're on the final lap, and Larry Ten Voorde then going past some back-marking cars. There is Thomas Preining, who is in P2 and looks untroubled by Henrik Skoog, who's P3. Edward Lewis Brawner going to have a final attempt on the Henrik Skoog car, and Henrik Skoog there with a mistake, but Skoog remains ahead of Edward Lewis Brawner then on the final lap of this 30-minute race here at the Nürburgring for the combination of the Porsche Sports Cup and the Porsche Carrera Cup, and this battle for P3 between Edward Lewis Brawner and Henrik Skoog, then the battle for the honours on the podium. Edward Lewis Brawner then with the lights flashing on Henrik Skoog. For Race Union Huber Racing, it's Herbert Motorsport for Edward Lewis Brawner, the two teams that run these cars that are fighting over this final podium place, the P3 position. Larry Ten Voorde is some 5 3/4 seconds up the road of Thomas Preining, who in turn is a full 4 seconds ahead of Henrik Skoog, because Henrik Skoog is having to defend like crazy against Edward Lewis Brawner here. He doesn't want to lose that final podium place now. Backmarking traffic ahead. Henrik Skoog flashes his lights furiously. Blue flags shown, of course, to the backmarking driver, and Henrik Skoog should go through unhindered. Indeed he does. So does Edward Lewis Brawner then. Final attempts at overtakes to come, potentially. And the back end of the Skoog car steps out. Does that cost him a little bit of momentum and allow Edward Lewis Brawner to get ever closer? Now it's the long drag as they head towards the NGK chicane. Henrik Skoog stretching the legs, but Larry Ten Voorde has one more turn to do, and he makes amends for the mistake that he made yesterday. And Larry Ten Voorde will win race 2 as the checkered flag falls on the Project 1 car. Here comes Thomas Preining, the Porsche Junior, to take P2. P3 will go the way of Henrik Skoog. He's seen off the challenge from Edward Lewis Brawner. And then it will be Arkin Acker that will take P5 ahead of Wolfgang Triller. And what a fight they delivered to us. It was fantastic. I'm convinced that's the first win for Larry Ten Voorde in the Carrera Cup. So he has taken the win in the number 910 car. And congratulations offered by the marshals as the cars make their way into the paddock. What a fantastic race. Of course, lots of cars still crossing the line. Let me give you the order as we've got it, because the top 10 have crossed the line now. It's Ten Voorde, Preining, Skoog, Brawner, Arkin Acker, P5, Wolfgang Triller, Osiaka was 7, Raykov 8, Schmidt-Stade was 9, Szczepanski 10. Interesting to see where Jürgen Hering has finished. He's actually clawed his way back to P12 behind Hornung. Then it was Esman, Carlos Rivas from the back of the grid, P14. And who is that is off in the gravel? Pretty sure that that's the Tom Kiefer car. Yes, it is Tom Kiefer then. Stefan Raykov makes his way into the paddock. Well, despite the really challenging conditions, we had some fantastic fights for places, which was really, really enjoyable to watch. So well done to all the drivers for delivering in very challenging conditions. Some great race action for us as they continue to cross the line. P's 20, 21 and 22 just crossing the line. Such a big, big grid of cars here. It's been a fantastic Porsche Motorsport race weekend, and due credit must go to the organisers of the Porsche Sports Cup. They put on a fantastic event. Well done. And thank you. Been great to be a part of it. In the end, Larry ten Voorde finished the race some 6 seconds ahead of Thomas Preining. Always thought that he had the pace, but at P1 and P2 position, changing hands so many times. The big crowd here at the Nürburgring have been treated to a fantastic race from Porsche in, as I said, extraordinarily challenging conditions, which the drivers did make the most of. Fantastic stuff. So the cars making their way into the paddock, as you can see. And here, confirmation of the classification then. Larry ten Voorde taking the win and also fastest lap. Thomas Preining, P2, Henrik Skoog, P3, Edward Lewis Brunner was P4, Arkin Acker was P5, then it was Wolfgang Triller, Andreas Asiaka, Stefan Rakoff, Jorn Schmidt-Stade, and Szczepanski then P10. Adam Asiaka, not Andreas. Then it was Hornen. Herring made his way back to P12, having led the early stages of the race. Then it was Esman, Carlos Rivas. Great showing from Carlos Rivas. Make it up to P14. And then the rest of the order on screen for you. So Larry ten Voorde then celebrating the win here at the Nürburgring. Of course, the Carrera Cup back at the Nürburgring. Can see from our commentary position here, Hans Bernd Kamps, the boss of the Project One Motorsport team, along with Franz Conrad, the boss of the Conrad Motorsport team, making their way to the podium. Here are the highlights. So the safety car led the cars away then, and there was already problems for the 168 car of Georgi Donchev, the Schutzen Motorsport car, which sadly couldn't get away and would therefore take no further part in the race. When the safety car did eventually come in after a couple of laps, then it was Jürgen Herring, who you wouldn't have bet against taking another win in race 2, but it was not to be. Despite him leading in the early stages there, he lost out and spun around, and that meant that Thomas Preining took up the lead from Larry ten Voorde. There then followed an extraordinary scrap between the two of them. Holger Harmsen was another one of the drivers that found the conditions way too slippery for the amount of the loud pedal that was being given at that point. Unfortunately, Wolf Natan and the car of Christian Koch having a coming together, and this was the fight for P1 between Thomas Preining and Larry ten Voorde. Larry ten Voorde all the way around the outside of the Thomas Preining car. Did a great job in terms of overtaking, but Preining was having none of it, particularly when he was gifted a mistake by Larry ten Voorde. That allowed him back into that P1 position, but wasn't going to last for very long, because again, Larry ten Voorde was really making the outside line work for him and seemed to find grip where no one else could. Put himself back in that P1 position, and from there on in, Larry ten Voorde was not going to be challenged again until this error, which allowed Thomas Preining to get very, very close once again, and Preining now trying the outside line, and he then made it work. Larry ten Voorde, though, was gifted that error by Thomas Preining. Fairness, he'd always looked the quicker of the two drivers, and quite rightly, he took the checkered flag and took the win. Thomas Preining taking P2. And what a great race it was. So we are in the assembly area behind the podium as the drivers take on some water. Thomas Preining there. A brilliant piece of drama crafted from the 30-minute race that we have just seen. Set to music, so the drivers there are awaiting being called out onto the podium. So Larry ten Voorde to the very right of your picture. To the very left is Thomas Preining. And Burkhard Bechtel then makes his way with the microphone to get the podium ceremony underway. So Larry ten Voorde, Henrik Skoog, and Thomas Preining made their way out onto the podium. Larry ten Voorde, Henrik Skoog, and Thomas Preining. So P1 for Larry ten Voorde, P2 for Thomas Preining, P3 for Henrik Skoog. Mr. Michael Steiner then, the Executive Board of Research and Development, makes the trophy presentation first of all to Larry ten Voorde. Dr. Frank Stefan Novolisa, then the Motorsport GT Vehicles, then makes the trophy presentation to Thomas Preining. And the business head of Porsche Germany, Mr. Carsten Schoens, will make the P3 presentation to Henrik Skoog. Well, Larry ten Voorde certainly did put right the wrongs of yesterday. And has made Project One very proud today with a fantastic race win. Hold the trophies aloft for the photographs, if you will. Gentlemen, please. All smiles up there on the podium. Once again, I must say, what a fantastic event this has been, organised by the Porsche Sports Cup for this Porsche Motorsport race weekend. And Carrera Cup here very much as a guest and invitation, and Thomas Preining first in the race to get the champagne open, and Larry ten Voorde then is on the receiving end then of what is almost like a pressure washer cauldron of champagne that Thomas Preining, the Porsche Junior, makes sure that Larry ten Voorde gets plenty of it. Great celebrations there, great race in very, very challenging conditions from those drivers, for which they should be congratulated. The audience here at the Nürburgring have enjoyed a very, very good race from Porsche here this morning. It was race 2 of the weekend. An invitation race for the Porsche Carrera Cup drivers, which carries no points positions for them in terms of the Carrera Cup, where they will next be appearing, funnily enough, here at the Nürburgring in the traditional Porsche Carrera Cup schedule, which is on the sprint circuit in September before heading off to the Sachsenring, and then the grand finale of the 2017 campaign to come at Hockenheim. We can see there is Thomas Preining, Larry ten Voorde and Henrik Skoog, all off to be interviewed by the various media here. Great to have this camera in the assembly area behind the podium. Sometimes nice to listen into the conversations that are going on. So Nürburgring once again for the Carrera Cup, but on the sprint circuit in the early stages of September. Then it's the Sachsenring mid-September, and Hockenheim to round out the season right at the end of the campaign in the middle of October, 13th and 14th of October. So there you can see both Thomas Preining and Larry ten Voorde are about to be interviewed out there in the on the podium. Larry ten Voorde with a very good job indeed. That battle for P1, which raged over many laps, was saw some brilliant driving from the two talented young stars. Thomas Preining then, of course, an official Porsche Junior. And as I mentioned right at the start of the program, a number of our traditional and regular Carrera Cup drivers are at Silverstone this weekend in the Super Cup because they have dual campaigns in that. Thomas Preining clearly feeling a bit stiff after the race. So back to full numbers of Carrera Cup when they're next here at the Nürburgring, but have been invited guests in this Porsche Motorsport weekend here at the Nürburgring on the GP circuit for this fantastic weekend of racing, all in support, of course, of the World Endurance Championship. So, beautiful shot of the castle as we bid our farewell and say thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you again very, very soon. Bye-bye for now.